So this is the barrel with a bit of damage on it. I'm sure you can see it there, look. And before I install it, this is the new sealing ring, and I wanted to try it in there. I think you can see it fits in fine. So they've done a pretty good job on that. Certainly the best that they could, I think. I can feel it sticking up proud. And these rings, these sealing rings, they're actually difficult to see, but they are actually a U-shaped piece of steel, a bit like a shape of a gutter, and inside it is a spring, and it must crush down onto that spring to create the seal. So yeah, it's got a little bit of leeway in there, in other words, and once it's in there I will unfortunately have to check the compression just to make sure that that one is okay, but I think it's going to be fine. Now the next job is cylinder head sealing and cylinder heads, and I found that if you have it vertical like this, the sealing rings will not sit in there. So because I have not got a Porsche engine stand, I'm just leaning it over like that on the workbench. Then the sealing rings will sit on just nicely, and I hope you can see that. I'm confident that they're going to stay in place at that angle while the cylinder heads go on. Okay, so this is the bottom of the engine here, so that is exhaust valves. Small ones go that way, inlet goes on here. Sure that's seated in nicely. Don't want the same trouble again. And on it goes. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is put the nuts in finger tight and then do the others. Once I've got one side done, I'm going to do the cams, then I'm going to turn the engine round, do the other side. While I'm doing this work, I'm also using this book, Porsche 911 Carrera Service Manual, and even though this version that I've got is from 84 to 89, the vast majority of the jobs are the same for this engine. And if I show you inside here, it is a completely fantastic book. It tells you make sure you get the pistons the right way up, make sure you get the crankshaft damper the right way up. Everything is covered, you know. It tells you how to make some little spacers to hold the barrels on. It tells you how to install the new head gasket in the groove. Everything really. How to reinstall the air shroud plates around the cylinders. So you know, you might forget that. Anyway, it's got them all there. You don't need to know which way around they are. Every single step of engine rebuilding is in here. It shows you next how to put the cylinder head nuts on there, and don't forget the washers, you know. So I'm hopeful with the use of this book that it's going to go my way. So now I've put the cylinder head washers and nuts in there hand tight, and the next thing you've got to do is make sure that the camshaft housing bearing surface is completely clean, as well as the bearing surface on the top of the cylinder heads, and they have to be completely level and flush across there. And I've checked them with a metal straight edge across there. Fairly unscientific, I know, but when I look down there, there is no air gap at all between those three faces. 1, 2, 3. So that's pretty flat. And also both the machine shop and I measured the thickness of the heads to make sure that they were all very similar, and we cannot see that there's any big problem there. They're all very similar. So next, the housing has to be tacked down onto some pins or pegs, dowels I suppose. With a copper hammer so as not to damage it. 2 or 3 mils still to go. That sounded good. That's on. Right, that's on all the way round. And what they say is that only once that is in there, holding all those dowels in the right position, then you can tighten up the cylinder head nuts, or at least those that you can get to, a little bit with the spanner. There we go, just enough to hold it all in place. I'm not tightening anything at the moment. There we go. And some of them you cannot really get to. It's a nice loose one there. Okay, so once the heads are now held in place, you can take off the camshaft casing again. You've got to be super careful not to hit any of those aluminium fins with this hammer. There we go. And now what I can do is I can cross torque all the cylinder heads up to the finished tension, and then I can put this back. So now I want to torque up these cylinder head nuts in a diagonal fashion to get everything seated just nicely there. And there's 2 different bits of information. The Haynes manual says tighten these to 29 Newton meters, and the other workshop manual says tighten them to 15 Newton meters plus 90 degrees, a quarter turn. Well, that is all fine, except that this is a standard torque wrench, very standard for use on cars, and it doesn't go below 30 Newton meters. That is the lowest that it goes on the scale here. If you can even see that, there's the number 30 there. That's the lowest from the setting. So I've got to set it to 29. So it's very low. And what it says is set it first to 15. So I've gone down from 30, another 15 to 15. But because it's not on the scale, I suspect it's not very accurate down there. Nevertheless, that's what I want to do. So there we go, it's starting to click. I hope you can hear that. It's 15. So the next job after the cylinder heads is putting the camshaft housing on top of those heads, and where this machine surface is, there is going to be oil inside that area where the valves are, and you have to put some sealant around there so the two machine surfaces do not leak. And you also have to install these oil return pipes so that the oil from the camshaft housing can soak back into the sump. Now, when I bought this car, the previous owner gave me these two-part pipes, which is a Porsche modification, so that you can replace these pipes and the seals while the engine is still in the car. And I'm going to use them anyway because I got them for free. So I've greased up the O-rings on both ends so that if there is any movement, that will allow that to reseal. And then I have to put some Loctite 544, which I've bought here at a cost of £30. And this is the non-setting gap filling sealant made by Loctite in a very trendy applicator where you can squeeze it here. And you use it for those two mating surfaces. Now that is £30 for that one. This one here from Hylamar is the same stuff. It costs £3.50, exactly the same stuff. So it's up to you. You know, in the Porsche manual it does say to use this one, so I'm going to use it. But I reckon, because that is exactly the same stuff and has been used in industry in engine production for 50 years, that this is probably just as good. Now there are 12 washers and nuts that attach the camshaft housing on, and 9 of them have normal washers and nuts. In fact, not like that nylock nut, a plain nut like this. And 3 of them have these special nuts which I remember taking off, and in my book it tells me where to put them back. That's where you put them back. So it's the opposite side to the oil return pipes. There are 3 like that. I'm going to put all those on both sides.